How's it hanging, guys? I am hanging on by a thread after last night's loss, but I am okay now. My name is Mateo Arenas.
I'm Dylan Freeman.
I'm not Nick Kennealy.
There's been a lot of activity in the sports world, and I'm going to start off with the Major League Baseball. Rookie of the Year winners have been announced. Yordan Alvarez was announced as the AL Rookie of the Year, and the NL was Pete Alonso. He was the home run champ. Alvarez was unanimously voted in, and Pete Alonso was out by one vote because of the Giants beat writer Alex Pavlovich. He voted for Mike Soroka. But another big headline is the MLB winter meetings with all the GMs is happening right now. There's a large assumption throughout the league that either Chris Bryant, Mookie Betts, or Francisco Lindor will be dealt in this offseason, which is very unfortunate. I would really not like to see Mookie get traded from the Red Sox, but there's rumors that he is going to be aggressively shopped in the offseason. The Giants have named Scott Harris executive for the Cubs, the general manager, and the coach/manager will be announced later this week. In the NBA, there's very many injuries for some star players right now. Gordon Hayward is out 6 weeks, and he has to have hand surgery. De'Aaron Fox is out 3 weeks with a sprained ankle, and a big game that happened was the Lakers had been red hot, but Pascal Siakam, with the defending champion Raptors, was able to stop him on Saturday night. The Spurs have retired Tony Parker's number 9, and not another Spur will ever wear that number. And Steph Curry, although there's a rumor that he will not be able to come back this season, he said that he hopes and wants to play in this season again. And the last big news for the NBA is Draymond Green received his first ejection in Chase Center last night in the loss to the Jazz. And Warriors loss. That's going to be a pretty common sight this year, so it's not going to be a great season. A big thing happened Saturday was college football, as it happens every Saturday. But the big game was LSU versus Alabama, number 2 versus number 3. Tua Tagovailoa was able to come in, but Joe Burrow completely outplayed him. LSU running back Clyde Edwards-Helaire was unstoppable for the LSU offense in that game, and Najee Harris had a big game for Alabama, but it wasn't enough as LSU was able to pull off the huge victory. Minnesota beat Penn State. A lot of people were surprised Penn State was ranked number 4 in the college football playoff rankings last week, and Minnesota handed it to them, and they stayed undefeated. Really big victory. Their quarterback, Tanner Morgan, played great, and is their first sellout in 4 years for the Minnesota Golden Gophers. The first game of the NFL Week 10 was Raiders versus Chargers. The Raiders pulled off the victory after a good late game drive capped off by a Josh Jacobs game go-ahead touchdown. He did not have the greatest statistical game, but he was able to score the touchdown. And Phillip Rivers had a rough start to the game. He threw a pick-6, which was the first touchdown of the game scored, and it was for the Raiders. But he played better in the second half.
Yeah, despite this Raiders secondary playing very well, their run defense is poor. There was no cloggage at the front line at all, and there were wide-open lanes, which were taken advantage of by Melvin Gordon, who, in good news for the Chargers, seems to be coming back to shape. He appears to be in mid-season form. He had a good game against the Raiders here, but they couldn't come up with the victory.
One positive note for the Los Angeles Chargers was a good game for Melvin Gordon. It's good to see. He averaged about 5 yards per carry with 108 yards and a touchdown. And that was good because he really struggled after coming back after his holdout.
Yeah, with the Chiefs falling, as we will get to later, the Raiders could make a run in this division with a semi-lenient schedule.
Yeah, with the Chiefs flustering again, this division seems to be wide open, and the Raiders are only a half game back in the AFC West. The next game in the National Football League was the battle of the New York teams, and the Jets were able to pull out the victory. Daniel Jones had a pretty good game, to say the least. He threw for 308 yards and 4 touchdowns, but the defensive play call was not superb by Pat Shurmur. Many are speculating that he is expected to be fired, but the big takeaway from the game was Saquon Barkley. He rushed 13 times for 1 yard. That is absurd, as he was the number 1 fantasy pick in virtually every league. And Pat Shurmur is just not calling the right rushing play. to get him involved. It seems like he only rushes him right up the middle, nothing to the outside, nothing to make his explosive playmaking skills and speed break out for a touchdown. But it was a close game, and I'm going to let Dylan talk about his guy, Sam Darnold.
On the other side of the ball for the New York Jets in this offense, Sam Darnold, baby. Finally, no turnovers, making it a little bit easier for me to defend him. He played pretty well. 1 touchdown passing, 1 rushing. And although this run offense for the Giants was not very good, who was getting involved very much in this game was rookie wide receiver Darius Slayton, who had a very productive game, 121 yards and 2 touchdowns.
Yeah, as you said, Saquon was stuffed. He's the second player since 1979 to have 13 or more carries and gain 1 yard or less in a single game. But as you touched on, Daniel Jones and Darius Slayton have great connection. This is the second game he has thrown 2 touchdowns to Slayton, and this rookie tandem seems like they're going to be a great force to be reckoned with for the Giants in the future. One thing that I thought was crazy was Jamal Adams for the Jets completely manhandled Daniel Jones, ripped the ball from his hands, and returned it for a touchdown. That was a pivotal game-changing play for the Jamal Adams Jets, and it showed why the Cowboys really wanted to trade for him during the trade deadline.
Yeah, Jamal Adams is certainly a very pivotal piece of this Jets team, and despite losing, Giants fans could be happy in what they've seen in Danny Jones. And with Sterling Shepard coming back, it might be hard for Darius Slayton to get as many touches, but with how he's been playing, he's been great.
Yeah, Le'Veon Bell, I would have liked to see a few more rushes, but he was able to score a touchdown. He just isn't getting the explosive breakout plays that you saw in Pittsburgh during his prime. He averaged 2 yards per carry in this game, with his long run was 4 yards. So that was a little bit disappointing, but Sam Darnold had a much better game than he played this season. One thing I thought was hilarious is after the game, Sam Darnold said that the Jets are still in the playoff hunt. They are 2-7, so I see that very unlikely going forward. Their best possible record is 9-7, which is barely over 500. The next game, which very much surprised me. I'm going to say, as I'll touch on later, our game picks were not good. There was a lot of upsets this week. We went basically all chalk, and it did not pay off. But the next huge upset was the divisional win for the Atlanta Falcons over the Saints. The Atlanta Falcons defense bottled up the explosive offense of the New Orleans Saints. Drew Brees did not have a great game, and Alvin Kamara was another running back that really flustered. A really bright spot is that head coach Dan Quinn, who was on the hot seat, shifted receivers coach Raheem Morris to the secondary, and it really paid off in this game. Raheem Morris was the coach after John Gruden left Tampa Bay as the head coach, and he had some pretty good seasons before he was fired. And I'm going to say that he's going to be a real head coaching candidate going forward, and he's not been in any conversations the last couple of years, but that is a name to watch in the head coaching rumor mill.
Yeah, the biggest shock of this game wasn't necessarily the fact that the Falcons won, it's just how they did it. I expected the Saints to win, and I expected that to be a lock, but I thought that it could be a shootout offensively. But the Falcons defense really stepped up this game. They sacked Drew Brees 6 times, and they seemed to be applying constant pressure. Unfortunately, just as things seem to be looking up for this Falcons team, though, they have 2 big injuries on their offense to star tight end Austin Hooper and running back Devontae Freeman. I don't know exactly how long both of those will be out, but that is something to watch.
Yeah, as you said about the sacks, they had 6 sacks in this game, and coming into this game, they had 7 sacks. So, as you said, Devontae Freeman will be out. Brian Hill had a pretty good game filling in. A big loss was they put Ito Smith on IR before this game, and that would have been a good guy to have back. But Brian Hill, he caught a touchdown, ran for 61 yards, and he might be a good sleeper fantasy ad in many leagues where he is available.
Yeah, even with the Falcons' defense playing well, Brees didn't play poorly, but he couldn't get into the end zone. Michael Thomas had a big game in the passing game, 152 yards on 13 receptions.
That is the first home game led by a Drew Brees run Saints offense where they didn't score a touchdown since 2006. That is a very stunning stat to me, and this is a big turning point for the Falcons. It could have saved Dan's Quinn's job, at least for the moment. And the Saints, they just need to go forward through this game and just realize they're still 7-2. They have great position in the NFC playoff race, and they should just move past this game. The biggest upset of the week was the Chiefs falling to the Tennessee Titans. Patrick Mahomes had a great game statistically, throwing for 446 yards and 3 touchdowns. He did not look back to full health, but the Tennessee Titans offense was carried by Derrick Henry's performance. He rushed for 188 yards and 2 touchdowns and had a monster game. He had more yards than his quarterback Ryan Tannehill had passing.
Yeah, Derrick Henry just completely gashed this Chiefs defense. And Ryan Tannehill, despite not having big yardage or anything like that, he played well. He only missed on 6 passes, 188 yards passing and 2 touchdowns. And he did lead his team to a game-winning drive that he capped off with a nice pass to Adam Humphries to seal the shocker of a game.
Yeah, this Chiefs, for the second week in a row, they had a chance to get a game-winning field goal to end the game, but Tennessee's Joshua Kalu blocked the game-tying field goal. So that was very big for this Titans defense. And an interesting stat that I heard is that Andy Reid, as a head coach, is 8-1 versus the Titans. Seems like the Titans is his Achilles heel to say. And if the Chiefs do end up being a high seed in the playoffs and the Titans sneak in, they could potentially play each other in the playoff. So this was a very big win for the Titans, and it's going to be interesting to see how the Chiefs play. And they've had some pretty big, surprising losses this season.
Yeah, this outing against the Titans again illuminates how poor this Chiefs defense is. Mahomes simply isn't going to be able to put 400 yards and 3 touchdowns up in every game. And with this poor defense, tougher competition is going to be hard to overcome. I see it as almost the opposite of a Patriots in some way. They've been carried by the defense essentially this whole season, where the Chiefs have been carried by the offense, and that's just not sustainable. But I think both of those teams that I mentioned will be able to come out on top.
The next game to conclude in the NFL was Ravens versus Bengals. And the first thing that I'm going to say is Lamar Jackson is unbelievable. He's like a human cheat code. He threw for 223 yards and 3 touchdowns and was the Ravens' leading rusher in the game at 65 yards and a touchdown. He's an unbelievable quarterback, and if you look back at this 2018 NFL draft, he was drafted with the last pick in the first round. You got to say that he's turned out better than Baker Mayfield, Josh Allen, Sam Darnold, Josh Rosen, all who were drafted before him so far in his young career.
Yeah, I'm not afraid to admit that I was clearly wrong about Lamar. I never thought he was as horrible as some people did, but he's turned out to just be a game breaker. 4 all-purpose touchdowns. It's just so hard to scheme against him. And with his throwing abilities developing as his career goes on, clearly his throwing abilities have developed since last season. Things are looking scary for anyone who has to play against the Ravens. Credit to the Ravens offensive coordinator, Greg Roman, for his innovative play calling and his ability to let Lamar do his thing. It would have been horrible if Lamar went to a team that tried to make him something that he isn't.
Yeah, Lamar Jackson is just the 6th player in NFL history to have multiple games with perfect passer rating. Him and Ben Roethlisberger are the only players to have that stat in the same season. But another interesting thing is that Marcus Peters had another pick 6. He's had 4 interceptions throughout this season in a combination with the Rams and the Ravens, and 3 of them have been pick 6s. So he has the real explosive playmaking skills on defense. But one thing that I thought was very funny in this game is that they had a backfield play where in the backfield they had 3 Heisman winners in the same play. 2011 winner was RG3, 2016 winner was Lamar Jackson, and 2009 winner was Mark Ingram. So that was very entertaining. And Robert Griffin III, RG3, he got in through 5 passes, threw a pick. So it's crazy how he was so hyped up coming out of college. That big injury on the Redskins basically ruined his career. But another thing I'd like to point to is, although most of it was into garbage time, Joe Mixon had a great game rushing, and that is good to see after he put up stats that was like 8 yards and 10 yards earlier in the season during the whole game. Ryan Finley was in a very poor situation. This is the hardest game to make your NFL debut in. He did throw for a touchdown. Wasn't an ideal game, but it should be more favorable for him against the Raiders next week.
Yeah, especially with AJ Green coming back, he might be able to do some nice things. This is a really tough matchup for him, and I don't think the Bengals should be out on him just yet, but I will have to wait to see if he is the guy.
Yeah, a lot of people are thinking that now, since as we'll touch on later, the Dolphins have won 2 straight, then the Bengals might be tanking for Burrow right now. So Ryan Finley really needs to prove himself right now if he wants to get his shot as being the future for the Cincinnati Bengals. Another surprising outcome was the Browns beating the Bills. Personnel-wise, the Browns are much better. They have a much more talented roster, but they have not played well so far this season. But they were able to get the victory against the Bills right here. It snapped their disappointing losing streak, and Baker Mayfield had a much better game than he's played this season.
Yeah, surprise game. I thought the Bills were going to be able to run away with this one. Josh Allen, 266 yards passing. No passing touchdowns, but 2 rushing touchdowns. The running backs for this Bills team were very underwhelming this game, and this Bills pass rush could not get to Baker. Only 2 sacks on this horrid O-line.
Yeah, although Josh Allen played, I would say, better than Baker Mayfield, they were not able to finish drives. Baker Mayfield was able to throw for 2 touchdowns, and he was able to throw to his guy, who he seems like he has a great connection with, Rashad Higgins, for a touchdown. I feel like the Browns need to bring out Higgins and more personnel, because it obviously doesn't look like he has a connection with Odell Beckham Jr. One thing that was pretty entertaining was the Bills stopped the Browns on 8 straight plays on the goal line, and because of some pass interference on them. But the Browns were not able to get a touchdown on that first quarter drive.
Yeah, touching back on this wide receiver core for the Browns, and specifically Baker Mayfield's connection with OBJ, or his lack of connection with OBJ, it appears that Baker prefers throwing to Jarvis Landry in the end zone, and this could lead to Baker getting even more frustrated than he is. But he had one of his better games of the season, considering how little his impact has been for this Browns team.
I think that Odell Beckham Jr. will be traded in the offseason. It does not seem like he has clicked with Baker as many would have hoped, and that has been disappointing. But another thing that was disappointing for me is I felt the Bills should have ran Devin Singletary more. He only rushed 8 times, and he rushed for 42 yards on those 8 attempts, averaging about 5.3 yards per carry. So I think they would have had a better outcome if they had ran him more in this game. Stephen Hauschka, the old Seahawks kicker, was 0 for 2 on field goals, and he missed the game-tying field goal with 22 seconds left. So that was very disappointing for this Bills team.
Yeah, I wish the Seahawks had Stephen Hauschka out there last night.
I certainly wish that too, but we'll get into that later. I'm glad I still have my voice after the amount I screamed about last night's game. The next game was Cardinals at Buccaneers, and Jameis Winston had a very Jameis game. He threw for 358 yards, 2 interceptions, and a touchdown. They were able to seal the victory after 2 rushing touchdowns for this Tampa Bay team. The Cardinals were not able to pull it off. Kyler had a pretty good game, but that rushing attack was so disappointing. David Johnson, after coming back for injury, he rushed for 5 times for 2 yards, and he fumbled. I feel that they should just commit to Drake going forward.
Yeah, Kyler was asked to throw the ball a lot this game, 44 times, which is what you'll see with this air raid offense. 324 yards, 3 touchdowns, but 1 interception. This running game, as Mateo talked about, was just poor. But watching David Johnson run, you could tell he is not 100%. He wasn't able to make cuts, and they should really be careful with David Johnson. They don't want him getting injured even more, and they have Kenyon Drake back there that they can use. But talking about the run game with the Bucs, although Ronald Jones was named the starter, he and Barber both had 11 carries, and they both found the end zone. But Ronald Jones was also a receiving threat, catching 8 passes for 77 yards.
Yeah, I'm very confident that Ronald Jones, I feel that in the offseason they should dispose of Peyton Barber, and I would commit to Ronald Jones long term. It seems that Kyler Murray has a great connection with Christian Kirk. He connected with him 6 times, 138 yards, and 3 touchdowns. Another weapon I would like to touch on for the Arizona Cardinals is Andy Isabella. He has been great. He hasn't been thrown to very many times this season. He only has 6 catches on the year, but every time he catches the ball, it seems like it's a long game. He had 3 catches on 3 targets in this game for 78 yards with a long of 55 yards. I feel that he will be a great weapon for this Cardinals offense going forward this season.
Yeah, speaking of pass catchers not targeted very much this season, a big development for the Bucs offense is second-year tight end O.J. Howard, who caught his first TD pass of the season. They should try and get him involved more. He's a good player. I don't know exactly where he fits in this Bruce Arians offense, but they would like to get him involved more, I'm sure.
Yeah, if you had to sum Jameis Winston up into the game, I would basically say this game. He can put up a lot of passing stats. He throws a touchdown, but he will throw more turnovers and give up more turnovers than he does touchdowns. So, I don't know about Jameis. I'm not going to commit to him long term. He always gives up the ball. He was able to pull off a victory, but I feel against many other teams he wouldn't be able to do that in this game. The next game was the Bears were able to snap their losing streak against the Detroit Lions. Matthew Stafford, right before the game, was said to be out of the game. He was not able to start with a back injury. It was revealed that he basically played with a broken back all of last year. And about that, he snapped his streak of 163 consecutive starts since 2010. So he is a good quarterback, and it's going to be interesting to see if they are going to have him come back next week. It was said that Colin Kaepernick is going to have a workout with all 32 NFL teams, so he might get an opportunity there if Matthew Stafford is out long term, because Jeff Driscoll does not seem to be the guy with Stafford out in Detroit.
Yeah, and if you watch this game, you know that despite throwing 3 touchdowns, Mitchell Trubisky wasn't very impressive against this Lions defense, who usually tends to give up a lot of yards through the air. But to his credit, though, his 3rd touchdown pass to tight end Ben Broniker, who I've never heard of, was a very impressive throw, but hope is not restored for me, although Mitch doesn't really make any poor decisions. He doesn't take many risks in order to get himself into poor decisions, but I just don't think that he's the guy for the Bears.
The Lions did not have much of a rush game, as they had Kerryon Johnson is out for the season, and Ty Johnson, who is supposed to be their guy now, got hurt during the game. He's expected to come back next week, but J.D. McKissick isn't a great runner for them. I like to see them commit to Ty Johnson if he is back and healthy, but the Lions, I say that they're still in the playoff hunt, but they're really going to have to deal with these injuries going forward.
Yeah, it really depends on how long Stafford is out. And Jeff Driscoll, this was a very tough first outing for him against this great Bears defense. But I believe if Stafford played this game, I'm convinced this may have been a blowout with how this Bears offense looked.
And the Dolphins have won their 2nd game. We're just going to do that every single time the Dolphins win a game this season, because everyone thought they were tanking for Tua, but Brian Flores has done a good job in making them win games. Ryan Fitzpatrick broke out and ran for a touchdown. He did get hurt a little bit during the game. He was out for a couple plays. He seemed very upset that he was out. Josh Rosen got in the game, didn't put up a single stat, so that was interesting. But I thought it was very entertaining to see the old man, Ryan Fitzpatrick, Fitzmagic to run for a touchdown. But their running game has been pretty much absent. Kalen Ballage has not been a good option since they traded Kenyon Drake. And an interesting stat I saw for Ballage is that he's the only running back since 1978 to average fewer than 2.06 yards per rush. He has 55 rushes and 113 yards. He's not breaking out for any big rushes, but Fitzpatrick kept him in this game. He scored their only touchdown on the run, and they were able to beat this Colts team. If they had Brissett, it would be a totally different story, but another team that could look to Colin Kaepernick is this Colts team, as Brian Hoyer did not play well at all.
Fitzmagic is no top-tier QB by any measure, but he does have a canny ability to extend plays and elude sacks. With this poor Dolphins O-line, he's often running around, and he's not bad throwing on the run. He also knows when to tuck and run, finding the end zone with his legs once this game. Hoyer was horrible. Oh my goodness, I was getting PTSD of him when he was playing for the Niners, but 3 interceptions against the Dolphins? Jeez. Marlon Mack has only had 3 touchdowns on the season, and I expected this to be a huge game for him, but he only had 74 yards. And Tua and Burrow are probably relieved now with this Dolphins team seemingly not carrying the first pick.
Yeah, Tua could still fall to them. That would be that. I can't wait for next year's NFL draft. There's such a good young crop. I know I'm getting a little off the point, but there's so many good talent-wise players in the next draft. Chase Young is going to be interesting to see how his draft stock is affected after his suspension. But it'd be funny if Brian Hoyer got replaced by Colin Kaepernick because Hoyer was the quarterback after Kaepernick was basically let go of by the 49ers. But Eric Ebron, they had a chance going late, but Eric Ebron was stopped 2 yards short of the first down on fourth down on their final drive. But this is the first consecutive victory streak for the Dolphins since December of last year. So that's pretty funny, but the Dolphins actually have a pretty easy schedule going forward. Their schedule, they could pull off a couple more victories. They play Cleveland, which they will probably lose. Buffalo, they'll probably lose. Philadelphia, they'll probably lose. But they play the Jets, the Giants, and Cincinnati. So they could win any three of those games with the way those teams are playing. So another victory for the Dolphins. We promise we'll clap every time they do it if it happens again. But the ownership does not want to win these games. Brian Flores is coaching them to victory. They're playing not very good teams, but they have won 2 weeks in a row. The next game, which I was very dismayed at the final victory, was the Panthers versus the Packers. I'm going to skip ahead to the final drive of this game. One thing I will say is the Packers, although they won this game, their defense does not look good at all. It was snowing, and they still couldn't stop Kyle Allen. And it was like dumping snow. It's an understatement if I was saying it's snow. And Kyle Allen was still able to drive this team downfield, but Christian McCaffrey was stopped at the half-yard line. Personally, I think he was in, but the replay was inconclusive with all the snow. Aaron Jones had a monster game. He ran for 3 touchdowns, averaged 7 yards per carry on 13 rushes for 93 yards. He kind of carried this Aaron Rodgers offense in this game. But Carolina, Christian McCaffrey had another big game himself. Kyle Allen did throw an interception, and I feel like the Packers just dominated this game. The Panthers still had a chance at the end, but they were not able to pull it off.
Yeah, Kyle Allen played pretty okay in this game. DJ Moore went off. The second-year wide receiver, DJ Moore, went off for the second week in a row. And the Panthers are also getting good old Greg Olsen involved quite a bit with 98 receiving yards. C-Mac played great as expected, 108 yards and 1 touchdown. Aaron Rodgers was carried by Aaron Jones, but all joking aside, Rodgers was very efficient and he drove his team. He just wasn't able to find the end zone because of how great Aaron Jones was playing.
You reminded me with Moore's big game because in one of my leagues, I benched Christian Kirk, who scored 38 points, Golden Tate, who scored 35, and DJ Moore, who scored 21. I would be very upset if I lost that game. I only won by 6 points after Matt Breida didn't have a great game for his team. That could have easily been the loss for me. But that's besides the point. This game, Moore did have a monster game, and that's pretty much it. That's all I'm going to have to say. Oh, Adams, after coming back, he had a good connection with Rodgers. He caught for 118 yards in the game. All right, the next game that I'm going to touch on is the Rams versus Steelers. It's remarkable how much this Rams team has regressed, considering they were in the Super Bowl last year, and now they're losing to a backup quarterback for the Pittsburgh Steelers. Jared Goff did not have a good game. He threw for 2 interceptions, 248 yards, and they're not really running Gurley. He had 73 yards, but throughout the season, they're not committing to him. They have 3 running backs down there. Blake Bortles got into the game. He ran for 1 yard. It's the boat. I love Blake Bortles, as you know. But there's a very interesting sequence in that game where they put in Blake Bortles for a play. He ran for a yard, and then Johnny Hecker, their punter, lined up under center, and he threw a horrible pass for an interception. I don't know what Sean McVay is doing. He was a hot commodity. Everyone that Sean McVay had talked to was getting hired as head coaches in the offseason, but he had some very skeptical play calling in this game.
Yeah, this was a long, slow defensive game, and Goff was garbage. 243 yards passing on 41 attempts and 2 interceptions, and my God, did this Steelers defense shut down Cooper Kupp to the dismay of my fantasy team. He had no yards, I believe no receptions. Steelers mixed in a lot of man and zone looks, which allowed Cooper Kupp to not be able to find the soft spots in coverage as he usually does. On the Steelers side of the ball, Rudolph held down the fort as usual. 242 yards, 1 touchdown, no interceptions. Jalen Ramsey was talking a bit of mess before this game about Juju. He held Juju to 3 receptions, 44 yards, but Juju and his team were victorious and had the final.
Mika Fitzpatrick has been a game changer for the Steelers offense. A lot of people thought they were giving a little too much for him when they traded a first-round pick to the Dolphins for him earlier in the season. But since Mika Fitzpatrick joined the team, they've been 5-2, and they've only allowed 17 points per game, 300 yards, and they've had an average about 3.5 takeaways. He's been so good for this defense. He recovered a fumble, and returned it for a touchdown, and had the game-sealing interception at the end of the game. As you said about Kupp, I feel if Goff threw to Kupp a little bit more, he only targeted him 4 times. He pretty much gave up on him in the passing game. It's funny because both him and Gurley he targeted 4 times, and they both had 0 catches. But if Goff threw to Kupp a little bit more, I think you'd have a better game. But it wasn't necessarily Kupp's fault for not breaking out in this one.
Yeah, both these teams, the Rams and the Steelers, made big moves in this slow trade deadline, picking up Mika Fitzpatrick for the Steelers and Jalen Ramsey for the Rams. Those were 2 pretty bold moves that they had to give up quite a bit for, but it seemed to pay off. The Steelers' defense is essentially carrying their team, and they're playing very great.
Mason Rudolph has a great connection with his fellow Oklahoma State alum, James Washington. They came out of Oklahoma State together in the same year last year. And in this game, he threw for him 7 times. He caught 6 passes for 90 yards and a touchdown. That is a great connection that I would like to watch if Mason Rudolph is the guy of the future for the Steelers going forward and James Washington stays. After Juju Smith certainly didn't do much for that receiving game in that last game. The Sunday Night Football game was Vikings at Cowboys, and as I predicted, the Vikings were able to go into Jerry's World and pull off the victory versus the Cowboys. Dak Prescott played very well, but Elliott did not himself. But this shut down Kirk Cousins' primetime road drought. He was 8-1 before this, and he got a victory, so that was great. His connection with Kyle Rudolph was great in this game. He threw 2 touchdowns to him. One was an amazing catch by Kyle Rudolph. I could have sworn that he was throwing it away, but Rudolph just grabbed it out of the back of the end zone, and that was amazing. But a big victory in this NFC playoff picture.
Yeah, the Dak and Amari Cooper connection is almost what the Browns were hoping to have with Baker and Odell, which hasn't come to fruition. But when Dak is under pressure and moving out of the pocket, it's like he just knows that Amari's going to be there. Amari's going to find the soft spot in coverage, and he's going to be able to throw it to him downfield, and it's just amazing to see.
All right, and that's all for football in the week. No Monday Night Football game this week.
Mateo, we have to talk about it.
All right.
Are you going to start? I'm not going to start.
All right.
Do we need to meditate?
Yes, Nick, we need to meditate. All right, the 49ers lost the Seahawks. I can say so much about this game. I watched this very intently, as did Dylan. Not so much Nick. He missed the whole first half. But this was a rough game for this 49ers team. They played pretty well in the first quarter, but I honestly don't want to talk about it. But I'm just going to skip to the end. Rookie kicker Chase McLaughlin, he sealed overtime with the game-tying field goal, but he completely shanked it in the game-winning field goal. Jimmy Garoppolo did not. I'm always a defender of Jimmy Garoppolo. He did not look good in overtime. His first throw should have been an interception, but go ahead, Dylan. Say what you want.
I have no notes. I read extensive notes. Yes, I have no notes on this game. This game, every single minute, second of this game is ingrained in my mind. It is so painful. I am a Seahawks hater. I don't know what it is with Jimmy G today. Our defense gave our offense great opportunities, getting turnovers and big stops on third down, big sacks, getting pressure on Russell Wilson, but we just couldn't get it done on offense. I think part of that was certainly the fact that we were missing our number 1 and number 2 receiving options, George Kittle and Emmanuel Sanders.
Now, I must pose a question. Do you think that Chase missed that game-winning field goal because he didn't have the skill in him, or do you think it was just too big of a moment for him to handle?
I think it was pure nerves. Before the game, he was hitting him from way longer, as Booger said. And, yeah, I think it was pure nerves. It's really tough. He's been on 4 teams this season. He's been bounced around, and he's only a rookie. So It's a big moment. You can't blame him too much. He's a rookie kicker, but I would have loved to see that go through. There's so many points in this game. The 49ers had so many chances. The 49ers had so many chances to win this game, and they couldn't do it. It wasn't just his missed kick. Literally in overtime, they were given a drive after this Dre Greenlaw so clutch interception of the MVP Russell Wilson. And Jimmy Garoppolo was not able to bring the offense downfield. I do not care. I love Jimmy Garoppolo. I've been a defender of him all year. And I was so disappointed with him in this game, in overtime especially. But Deebo Samuel had a good game, which was good. Kendrick Bourne basically almost caused 2 interceptions. One was an interception. He had some good catches. He caught a 2-point conversion and a touchdown. But the one ball, he let go completely through his hands and became an interception. Another one should have been an interception, but we were missing I just can't stand when people say 49ers didn't play a good team. That's what you guys said about the Panthers and the Rams game. We had so many injuries. We were missing our top 2 receiving options. We were missing George Kittle and Emmanuel Sanders for the whole game. We're missing a lot of defensive options. We have some guys that are rusty on the offensive line because they're just coming back. And we have so many injuries. Another injury that just got brought up is Ronald Blair is out for the season now with a torn ACL. And I get so mad about this game. This was a playoff atmosphere. This would have been a huge victory. But you cannot say that the 49ers did not show up. They kept it close. They are an amazing team. Their defense is amazing. They had that amazing fumble return for a touchdown. They are for real. I can't wait. I hope we play the Seahawks again in the playoffs so we can just demolish them later. And for all the Raiders fans out there saying the 49ers suck, I wish that the Raiders played the 49ers this season so we could destroy you guys. The only possible time we can play you this year is in the Super Bowl, but it won't happen because the Raiders they're probably not even, if they make the wild card, they won't get out of the first round. That's all I'm going to say.
But say what you must about the Seahawks. I mean, you got to play with what you got. Play with the players that you bring. And, injured or not, Niners played great, but the Seahawks organization is very good this year. One of the top teams in the NFC, undoubtedly. Also a very good team in the NFL. But, their defense, it may not be the Legion of Boom, Doom, whatever it was, back with Richard Sherman and all them, but they still have a very solid defensive core.
Yeah, you want to say the luck play. You want to say, Seahawks got lucky. We had so many players injured. But the most painful thing was that I touched on earlier. We could not capitalize. This offense could not capitalize. We had so many opportunities given to us by this great defense. Robert Saleh was getting hype on the sideline, as he usually was. I was just as hype as him in my house. But what I will say about the Seahawks defense, who I would not want to give any credit to, we really haven't talked about the Seahawks team very much, but I suppose to be true analysts, we must talk about both teams. The Seahawks defense played very well against the run. They were stacking the box, giving us little opportunity to establish a run game, which is a crucial part of our offense. They made Jimmy G throw the ball a lot, and it's hard when we can't develop the run game and we can't get play action going. But man, this game, it was really just killer.
Yeah, the Seahawks definitely committed to stop the run game, so they forced Jimmy Garoppolo to throw, and it really worked out. Jimmy Garoppolo had a monster game last week versus the Cardinals, but he did not show up in this one. He didn't play horrible, but it wasn't great. On the other side, Russell Wilson is the best, I'm saying the best quarterback in the NFL. He opened up plays. Literally, there was a play where he scrambled in the pocket. There's 4 guys coming for him, and he throws a perfect pass to the wide open receiver coming across the field. He opens up plays. He is so good. He is so underrated. Even though people are saying the MVP, he is still so good. And Josh Gordon was a great acquisition for them. Although he didn't have monster stats, he only caught 2 passes, but he sealed the game. He got 2 huge third down catches that sealed drives for them. But yeah, it was a rough game. I was so down on the 49ers after after they were down by 2 touchdowns, but that run back that contributed to by the whole defense was so amazing. DeForest Buckner was able to run it back for the touchdown. That was a great sequence for the 49ers. This defense is so good. Does not take away from this team. They're playing one of the best, if not the best, quarterbacks in the NFL, but it was a rough game. We couldn't really establish a running game because the Seahawks committed to stopping that, but yeah. But as I said before, Dre Greenlaw, that was a great interception, stepping up big in the absence of Kwan Alexander.
Yeah, Russell's playmaking ability is just undoubtedly probably the best in the league at his position, but he didn't have an amazing game. He had an interception, which is rare for him this season. He didn't break 300 yards. He only had 1 touchdown, but it's just on this Seahawks side of the defense, Jadeveon Clowney, who hasn't played very great this season, he was a big impact player for the Seahawks. He seemed to be getting pressure on every play. Mike McGlinchey and Joe Staley, big additions off the injury report. They were back this game, and they just seemed to be rusty. And when we were trying to develop Kyle Juszczyk out of the backfield, checking and running on play actions, Ross Dwelly was not able to make up for him leaving a spot, and he wasn't able to pick up blocks on Jadeveon Clowney.
Yeah, as you said about Juszczyk, he did set up a big run for Tevin Coleman, which was 22 yards, basically half of Tevin Coleman's running stats on the game. But I texted Dylan during the game that McGlinchey, Staley, and Juszczyk all looked rusty to me. So we weren't at full health. I'm confident that we 9 out of 10 times, or maybe probably 7 out of 10 times, we beat the Seahawks team because they are a very talented team. But I'm very confident in the 49ers going forward. I'm just glad that we might have got rid of a few bandwagon fans that are just along for the ride that we lost. And it takes off a lot of pressure of the undefeated season going forward.
Yeah, and mark my words, we do see the Seahawks team later in the season. We will be healthy. Hopefully some of this good, positive comeback energy from the defense moves over the offense, and I'm excited to play the Seahawks again. Good game, Seahawks.
All right, so next we're going to go into NFL Week 11 picks. Last week I was 4-9. Dylan was 3-10. A wholly different pick was the Cowboys and Vikings game. I correctly picked the Vikings.
I was trying to be different.
It's not much of a victory because I feel like Dylan just did it to be different. He literally said he had the Vikings circle as you listen back to that segment. But now I am 5-3-2, 60% winning percentage in first. Dylan is 2-4, 50% winning percentage on the year. The first game is Thursday Night Football, Steelers at Browns, and I feel the Steelers are going to win this game. I feel like Mika Fitzpatrick is going to have a good game, and the Steelers defense is going to bottle him up, and Mason Rudolph is going to have a good game, and James Conner's back, so I feel like he'll have a good game as well. And they're going to stop this Browns team, and they're not going to let them win 2 straight.
Yeah, this could be a slow game similar to the Browns and Bills game, but the way the Steelers defense has been playing, there's no way I can pick against the Steelers. I'm picking the Steelers. I think Baker's going to play well, but I think the big factor is going to be this matchup between James Conner and Nick Chubb. Who's going to run better? I think James Conner's going to come back with a vengeance.
Next is Jets versus Redskins. Redskins are coming off a bye. They have committed to Dwayne Haskins for the rest of the season, and I feel that Dwayne Haskins is going to get his first career victory in this one. I know that Dylan's probably going to go the other way after the Jets win last week, but after they haven't utilized Le'Veon Bell, I think that Adrian Peterson's going to have a really good game. Maybe Darius Geis is going to have a good game as well, and I think that Dwayne Haskins is going to get back with his Ohio State teammate, Terry McLaurin, and he's going to beat the Jets.
I'm simply not a believer in Dwayne Haskins, and you all know how I feel about Sam Darnold. I'm picking the Jets. I think Le'Veon Bell, I say this every week, I seem to say this every week, but I think Le'Veon Bell can really have a breakout game against this poor Redskins defense, and I think Jamal Adams is going to be a big factor in this game. I'm taking the Jets over the Redskins.
Next is Jaguars at Colts. The Jaguars are also coming back off of bye, and I'm going to pick this one assuming it is not Brissett and it's Hoyer, but it's probably going to be Brissett because I always do this wrong. But I think nonetheless, that Nick Foles is going to have a good game in his first game back. In week 1, he threw for a touchdown before getting injured right away, seemingly. But I think he's going to have a good game, and Fournette's going to really open up the pass game with some play-action passes. And I think that the Jaguars are going to win this game backed by Big Nick's game.
Yeah, that was a little dicey there, but I'm taking the Jags. I think Brissett may play, but if Hoyer's playing, it's easily the Jags. I think nonetheless that I'm taking the Jags here. It'll be interesting to see who Nick Foles forms a connection to. DJ Chark has been the best wide receiver for this team, and I'm interested to see if that continues with Foles back. I'm taking the Jags.
Yeah, I believe that his first touchdown of the year was to Chark, so that should be good. Good connection, as Chark had a good connection with Minshew as well. Chark is a really good wide receiver, so that should be good for this team. Next is Bills at Dolphins. Bills are going to bounce back, get a victory, stop the Dolphins, and win this one.
I'm taking a while because I don't want to sound outlandish, but I'm taking the Dolphins. I don't really want to explain myself, but I'm feeling it. Hype train. I'm a Dolphins bandwagon. I'm taking the Dolphins over the Bills. I saw the Bills just played against the Browns. It wasn't very impressive, and I'm taking the Dolphins.
That is the dumbest thing I've ever heard you say.
Hey, shut up.
Next is Cowboys at Lions, and I'm just going to say I'm thinking Stafford's not going to be back, and I think the Cowboys are going to have a bounce-back victory in this one.
Yeah, if Stafford was back, I would take the Lions in this one, but I think Dak is going to play great against this poor Lions passing offense. I'm taking the Cowboys.
Next is Texans versus Ravens, and this is going to be a good game, I believe, but I think the Ravens are going to pull off the home victory.
This is tough. It is a home game for this Ravens team. I don't want to have the similar picks to Mateo all the time, but after seeing how Lamar played, I'm taking the Ravens over the Texans.
Alrighty then. Next is Falcons at Panthers, and I kind of want to pick the Falcons in this one, but I think Christian McCaffrey is just too good, and he's going to have a monster game, and I'm picking the Panthers.
I'm taking the Falcons in this game against the Panthers. Maybe it's a poor decision for me to hop back on the Falcons. They might fall back down to earth, but I'm taking the Falcons in this game.
You're like Big Cat in this one at the beginning of the year. Yeah, next is Saints versus Buccaneers, and I think the Saints are going to – Drew Brees is going to have a monster game. Kamara is going to have a good game. They're going to bounce back in this one.
Believe it or not, I'm not. I'm taking the Saints over the Bucs here. I think it's going to be a big game. Drew Brees is going to come back, and he's going to play well.
Next is Broncos versus Vikings. Vikings are going to win this one. Kirk Cousins and Dalvin Cook are going to have good games, and that's that.
Vikings outright.
All right, next is 49ers versus Cardinals. Nothing much to say here. 49ers win.
49ers win.
Next is Patriots versus Eagles. Rematch of Super Bowl 52, I think. 52. And Patriots are going to win this one and get revenge. Sweet, sweet revenge against the Eagles.
I'm taking the Patriots over the Eagles.
Next is Bengals versus Raiders. And I think Ryan Finley's going to have a good game. It's going to be close, but I think the Raiders are going to pull off the victory.
Yeah, I think it'll be closer than some may seem, but I am also taking the Raiders. I think Josh Jacobs is going to be a big factor in this game.
Next is Bears at Rams, and I really don't want to, but I think I'm going to pick the Bears right here. Dylan's had some interesting picks, and this is mine. I think that Mitch Trubisky's going to have a good game. I hate to say it, but not hate to say it. I'd love to see him succeed, but he hasn't been good this season. But I think him, and I think they're going to commit to the run with Devin Singletary. The Rams' offense isn't going to get it going with Gurley, and I think they're going to be able to pull off this upset.
Yeah, I think Mitch is going to be real scared with Jalen Ramsey out there. What a great Sunday night game. This is going to be such a good game, but I'm taking the Rams over the Bears.
Last is Chiefs at Chargers, and I think this game will actually be close, considering how it is in Mexico, too. So it's no real home field advantage. They might be flustered by the different field conditions, because last year the remarkable Rams-Chiefs game that game turned out to be amazing. That was supposed to be in Mexico, but based on bad field conditions, it didn't end up being played there. But the first game in NFL history in Mexico, I think the Chiefs are going to pull it off, but I think it's going to be closer than many expect.
Yeah, I think this will be a close game. Melvin Gordon has come back into shape. The worst part of this Chiefs defense is their run defense, but there is seemingly no run game for this Chiefs team. I'm really tempted to take the Chargers, but I think Patrick Mahomes is just going to play lights out this game. I'm taking the Chiefs over the Chargers.
And that is that for picks. We're going to go into Nick's hockey segment, and I'll touch on a few more things, and then it'll be the end of the weekly assist. All right, Nick, go ahead and hockey.
Hopping straight into hockey, just a quick check on the standings. The Washington Capitals have a firm grasp on the NHL right now. They have 30 points. They're 13-2-4 with 77 goals for. That's like way above any other team right now. The St. Louis Blues are the first in the Western Conference, though, with 27 points, going 12-3-3, also really good. The Edmonton Oilers are second in the West with 26 points, 12-5-2. The San Jose Sharks are second to last in the Pacific Division over the Kings, who are the worst team in the NHL, with 11 points, 5 wins, 11 losses and 1 overtime loss. The Nashville Predators are doing all right. They're third in the Central Division, 21 points, just 1 point down from being second place tied with the Avs. My two favorite teams, the Sharks and the Predators. The Sharks won 2-1 in shootout. Hurdle and Forsberg, each for their own teams, scored in regular time. Martin Jones, the goalie for the Sharks, had 24 saves. He went 96% on his save percentage, and that'll wrap it up for the hockey segment.
All right, a few more things I'd like to touch on is AL Manager of the Year was announced. It was Rocco Baldelli, the Twins manager. Many people thought it was going to be Aaron Boone or Cash, the Rays manager or the Yankees manager, but it ended up being him. And then in the NL, it was Mike Schilt, the Cardinals manager, bringing them to their first divisional crown since 2015. A few more things is during the podcast, some big news was broken. The college football playoff rankings were announced, and of course, LSU is first after their big victory against Alabama. Ohio State is second. Clemson is third. Georgia is fourth, but I don't think that's going to last after they play LSU during their SEC championship game. And Oregon moved up to 6. I'm happy about that. Nick would like to say something. Alabama's 5th, by the way. They moved out of the top 4 after the loss to LSU.
So I have a question to pose you, all right? Who do you think will make it to the college football playoff championship, and who do you think will be crowned the national champions?
I think the top 4 is, I think it's going to be LSU, Alabama. Alabama won't be second, but I think they're still going to get in. Ohio State, and I'm really hopeful Oregon will get in.
I knew you were going to say Oregon.
I really want Oregon to win. I don't know if they can win. If they could, because they have a great passing attack with Herbert. They have some really good wide receivers in Pittman, and I'm really confident in this Oregon team. I think that they're very underrated. They would have won the Auburn game if literally Auburn won in the fleeting seconds in this game. But I think that LSU will win. But I'm hoping I'll be rooting for Oregon. I think Oregon could really surprise some people if they do get into the game after beating Utah in the Pac-12 championship.
You know, for the college football playoffs, I'm going to give you my top 4. You ready? Number 1, LSU. Number 2, Ohio State. Number 3, Alabama. And number 4, Clemson. Personally, I think that LSU is just going to win it all.
It's all chalk, Nick. You're going all chalk.
Okay, well, it's realistic. We're just being realistic here. I'm taking LSU to win the whole shebang, as some would say.
I've never heard anybody say that.
I'm pretty sure you have heard some people say it. So write down in the comments below who you think is going to be the national champion.
But another big news was Chase Young, the Ohio State projected number 1 overall pick, was suspended 1, maybe more games because he received a loan from a family friend to get his girlfriend to fly out to the college football playoffs last year. And that is very surprising, and it'll be interesting how it hurts his draft stock. And in the NCAA B, men's basketball, projected number 1 overall pick in the NBA draft, James Wiseman, is expected to be suspended projected number 1 overall pick in the NBA draft, James Wiseman, is assumed to be ruled ineligible by the NCAA after Penny Hardaway, his head coach in Memphis, reportedly assisted him and his family with some money in his move to Memphis. So that is certainly interesting to watch after projected number 1 overall pick in the NBA draft, but he has played a couple games. He is expected to play versus Oregon in the coming days, but that is certainly interesting to watch. The last thing that I will say is, as I touched on, Colin Kaepernick's workout is this Saturday, and apparently he was only able to find out about it literally this morning along with the rest of us, and he asked if it could be moved, if it could be on next Tuesday or later Saturday, and the NFL said no, so he might not be 100% prepared. He said he's been working out, so it'll be interesting if he gets a shot back in the NFL. I'd love to see it happen, but that is all for the Weekly Assist. I am Mateo.
I'm Dylan Freeman.
I'm Nick Kennealy.
And thank you so much for listening. Make sure to like, subscribe, and we will see you next week.